بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا تعويل وجعلنا من خيرة أمة سيدنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. We seek Allah's protection from knowledge that does not benefit, from a heart that has no khushu, from a nafs that's never had enough, from an eye that does not tear, and from a dua that's not heard. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah everyone's doing well. As we do, the reminder for us to please keep the people of Palestine, specifically Gaza, in your du'as, who are going through an extremely difficult time. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease their pain, give them relief, and make it easy for them. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase their rank, give the best of companionship to all those that have been martyred. We can continuously, like I said, make dua, raise our voices about it, and I say this time and time again, that do not stop raising your voices. So you're speaking for the innocent life. An innocent life is an innocent life, so you're speaking for that. Okay, no one should have an issue with you speaking up for an innocent life. We're asking that that civilians are not bombed, babies are not killed, women, children, innocent. What is wrong in you asking for that? Okay, so do not stop in this, because especially through social media, etc. They're trying to make it as difficult as possible. So people, you have to be extra careful. Don't say this. All of that. But yeah, continually get the truth out there. Get the truth out there. What the truth is, and the truth eventually comes out. You come out with a lie as much as you can, but then eventually the truth will come out. Okay, so continue with the truth and let people know what's happening. And it's important that the message gets out to everyone. And this doesn't stop. So it's a case of we come out with that message. Always the point of saying it again. Continue to say it. Doesn't matter. Continue to say it. It should be in everyone's face every time and time again. This is the truth. This is the truth. Okay. So please do not stop in that sense. Any peaceful protest to raise raise the message, to the relevant personnel. Okay. However that is, in a peaceful manner. Please do that. Okay. If you can assist any charity work or raise any funds for, again, those that are on the ground, that it will genuinely get to those that are suffering. Whatever food, clothing, etc. can be provided, medicine that can be provided, please do so. So whatever little you can do, please continue to do so. Jazakallah khair. So we continue with the Seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the biography of the Prophet ﷺ, and lessons that we can learn from it. Okay. Now, I adjusted the kind of volume a bit today, so if people find it to be a bit of a problem, let me know. Then I can kind of readjust it again. I'm just testing it out. I thought maybe I sound really quiet because that's the way I kind of speak. So I increase the volume level a bit. But if it is too much, then please let me know. With feedback on that. So last week we covered the letters that were sent. Well, actually, interestingly, so we did last week's lesson. As soon as I finished the lesson, my son comes to me and says, "Abba, I didn't understand anything of that." Oh, that's amazing, isn't it? So I spent all that time, and he goes, "I didn't get it." So just a kind of a simple version on that we spoke about the letters that were sent out. First of all, we spoke about the letters that were sent out, or messages that were sent out. And I remember I brought up this kind of map that shows you that obviously they showed you where Medina is, it shows you where Makkah is. You can clearly see there in the middle way, in the blue. And then you have those arrows, okay? And the arrows are kind of green arrows where specifically, with messengers, like ambassadors, etc., were sent out to these people or these areas, these rulers, okay? And then the blue ones are kind of, I suppose, there's not as much on it, but definitely letters were sent out, okay? But this was the Prophet ﷺ talking about, like, the Medina, the Muslims are being recognized. So he sees it at the point, as a prophet, as a messenger, he needs to get the message across to people, give them opportunity. Here you go, because no one can turn around and say, oh, we didn't know. We were having this discussion actually a couple of days ago, that can truly people kind of claim that, oh, the message did not receive, we did not receive the message. I'll go this day and age with the technology, social media, etc. And we got scholars say that no one can use that excuse. Okay, the fact that the message did not reach us. Okay, but in those times, as I mentioned last week, just to kind of get to a message across from Yemen or Persia, etc., it would take weeks, even months. Okay, even more than that. The way there was travel, etc. So the excuse can be at that time, or we did not know what was happening. No one delivered the message to us. So this is the Prophet ﷺ delivering the message. So last week we spoke about the Prophet ﷺ kind of sending out and delivering messages to the surrounding leaders. So here you go, look, this is it. I'm the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Believe in one God. Believe in me as being the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, that was the first part we spoke about. Okay, then we moved on to, and I suppose this is probably where people got a bit confused, because we spoke about how the magic was done upon the Prophet ﷺ. And you have the two surahs that were then revealed. Okay, the two surahs that were revealed of protection. And we did a bit of you can say tafsir on the two surahs. So I went in a bit more, like speaking a bit about those two surahs. So that's the kind of two things that we really covered. The letters that I went out to call everyone to Islam, to call the leaders to Islam, because obviously the leader, if he accepts, he then filters it down to his people. Okay, it makes it easy for his people as well. That's the way the times were. That's the way things were at that time. And then we spoke about the Prophet ﷺ, how he became ill, memory, forgetfulness, etc. All of this because someone had done black magic on him. And then these two surahs, Qul A'udhu Birabbil Falaq and Qul A'udhu Birabbin Nas, were revealed, and we went through that. Okay. Another thing that took place around about this time was the passing away of Ruman. I'll be pleased with her. Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq's wife and the mother of Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. Now, news of her death reaches her son Abdul Kaaba, who comes to Medina. Actually, he comes to Medina to embrace Islam. Remember, at Uhud, Abdul Kaaba emerged kind of on his horse and challenged the Muslims. Like when you got this one-to-one combat initially. So he challenged the Muslims. And at that time, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq rose and he stood up to fight his son, but the Prophet ﷺ stopped him. Okay, so Abdullah Kaaba comes to Medina to accept Islam, and the Prophet ﷺ warmly accepts him and changes his name from Abdul Kaaba, which is servant of the Kaaba, to Abdul Rahman, servant of the Most Merciful. Okay. So what today's lesson is about is about Khaybar. Now, Khaybar is mentioned, and a lot of people know Khaybar because of the famous story of Sayyidina Ali, which we'll touch upon as well. But we spoke about all the kind of issues around the different Jewish tribes. Okay, the treacheries, how they were kind of banished, etc. We went through the Banu Qaynuqa, Banu Nadir, and all of this, like what happened. You've got certain ones were banished, and then after the most recent one, it was a case of the famous opinion was that they were assassinated, executed, based on the ruling from their own kind of own person, really, or someone who they considered close to them. Okay. But again, we spoke about difference of opinion around that. But anyway, so this is what's been happening around the Jewish tribes. So we've got the kind of Treaty of Hudaybiyah. The last remaining kind of significant threat to the Muslims was Khaybar. Okay, and we've already just seen now on the back of it how the Jews of Khaybar kind of paid this sorcerer to kill the Prophet ﷺ through his black magic. Okay, so there was a problem, there was an issue around all of this. Okay, so the kind of remnants of the treacherous Banu Nadir, Quraysh and others were kind of held up there, stranded by kind of rich farmland. That's what Khaybar was. That was rich farmland. Okay, they had been responsible for inciting the Meccans in both Uhud and the Trench. Okay, and again, as I just mentioned, obviously the bribed Labid for his sorcery. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ decided to neutralize the threat. The threat. Give me just 1 second, please. Sorry about that. So the Prophet ﷺ decided to neutralize the threat. Okay, so Khaybar is almost like 100 miles to the north. So as we saw in the map I was showing you, you got Medina. It's high, so you got Mecca. Then obviously you go up, you got Medina, but then go further up, and that's where you got Khaybar. Okay, it's not a city like Mecca. It's a kind of fertile oasis composed of kind of hills and valleys, dotted with separate kind of fortresses that house each of its kind of Jewish clans, you can say. Okay, so it's a number of fortresses. It's not just one big fortress. It was a number of fortresses, and the difference of opinion how many fortresses there were, but the case was a minimum of about, say, 8 at least. Okay, so the people of Khaybar had not only kind of instigated the Quraysh in the campaign at the Trench, like I mentioned, but also kind of kept the Bani Ghatafan at odds with Medina. And that's okay. Bani Ghatafan, they're going to come back again. Okay, so Khaybar is about kind of 100 miles to the north, and the eastern kind of Bedouin tribes of Ghatafan and Khawazim kind of thing. All of these, yeah, they're kind of towards the east, I suppose. The Ghatafan and Khawazim will mention that as we come along the next few weeks. Then I'll show you kind of a quick map of the location of each of them. Okay. So, however, the Prophet ﷺ, he made the decision of kind of laying siege or kind of on Khaybar. It wasn't a case of that he permitted everyone to come in this campaign. Okay. He only permitted those who had come to Hudaybiyah to march with him. Okay. Now what had happened was that when it came to kind of easy campaigns, then a lot of these would just tag along. Okay. But when it came to Hudaybiyah, there was no worldly gain and it was all risk. Okay. So they realized, oh, wait a minute, there's no worldly gain. There's not going to be any war booty. There's not going to be anything for us. And yet we're going into the enemy territory who we've just been battling for so long, without any armor, without being prepared for battle. They're not coming back. Remember we spoke about that. They had it in their mind that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the Quran. So their view was that these Muslims aren't coming back. So these kind of times they hid away. So for Hudaybiyah they hid away. But now when everyone kind of heard about Khaybar, whoa, this is like a jackpot. The biggest prize was Khaybar. Okay, so everyone was kind of eager. Yeah, I want to go along. This is going to be, this is going to be easy. We'll get so many riches from this. Okay, but the Prophet ﷺ did not allow it. So only those that came on Hudaybiyah. This was in order to maximize the sincerity of this army. Okay, only they were allowed to come along. Okay, only they were allowed to come along. So 1,500 Muslims set off for Khaybar. Now some of the number of at about 1,600 or 1,700 around about there. Okay, so it was the 7th year of Hijrah. Some say Muharram, others Safar. So likelihood is that it started in Muharram and ended in Safar. Okay. Now Khaybar boasted a kind of a succession of very strong castles. Not one, but several, as I mentioned, several fortresses, and it was 10,000 fully armored fighting men who would kind of regularly train. You know, they also had. So what happened is when kind of the word got to them about the plans of the Muslims, kind of they sent out to the Ghatafan to support 4,000 men. So the idea was that, look, come along and we're going to give you, you know, X amount of our annual kind of produce or whatnot. You know, just come along and help us against the Muslims. Okay, so 10,000 already there, and then 4,000 additional coming from Ghatafan. Okay, coming from the east. Okay. Now, when it comes to the Muslims, when it comes to the Prophet ﷺ, had the Prophet ﷺ put word out that we're going to take Khaybar, you know, then he would have had many people. As I mentioned, Khaybar was a rich place. You know, the spoils of war, etc. He would have got so many people, but no, he stuck to those that came with him Hudaybiyah. Hence why the numbers were small. Okay, because those who performed Umrah with him did so only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that was proven. So you know, you got this small number. Okay. Now one of the companions wanted to accompany but was too poor. Why do you actually poor? Because you know, you've had all these campaigns, etc. How come they're still poor? Because any of the poor, you know, who were emigrating to Medina, and the Sahaba were giving them, you know, giving away their wealth, etc. Just as the previous ones, you know, the Ansar, etc., have the Muhajir, you know, here you go, shared everything like 50-50, gave them the wealth so they can get on their own feet and, you know, livelihood, etc. Same thing was happening now. More and more as they were coming along, the poor people coming along, the Sahaba, etc., they were helping them out. So a lot of them were just poor. They did not have much wealth. Okay, they did not have much wealth. Now this particular Sahaba, Abu Abs ibn Jabir, he was so poor that he didn't even have a cloak to wrap himself with. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ gave his own kind of good-looking, real nice cloak. So the Prophet ﷺ gave him his cloak. Later on, what happened? The Prophet ﷺ sees him and he's wearing this old kind of ragged cloak. Okay? What he had done, when he was asked, obviously, what he had done, he sold the Prophet ﷺ's cloak. You know, he thought, you know, this is so much I can do with like some kind of old ragged one. Okay, so he sold the Prophet ﷺ's cloak, so, you know, sold it for 8 dirhams, and he bought an old one for maybe 2 dirhams, and he used the rest for, you know, on provisions. Okay, rest on provisions. So the Prophet ﷺ said that soon you will get so much. I'm just checking. It's coming up that that's a bit of a problem. Okay, it seems okay. Anyway. So what happened? No one believed that the Prophet ﷺ would actually march up on Khaybar. Okay? The odds were so massively stacked against him. It was inconceivable that he would march out like this by choice, to march out like this. You know, one is that, you know, you're kind of stuck and you have to march. You have no choice, or someone's about to attack and you attack before, etc. But by choice going this, you know, so, you know, it doesn't make sense. The Meccans actually here, he was marching, but didn't believe it. Okay, they got no chance. You know, he wouldn't do that. It would be great if he did it, but he can't be that foolish. Okay, Salahi actually reports that the Prophet ﷺ first sent about 30 companions, led by Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, to try to negotiate a peace treaty with the Jews of Khaybar. Only after they tried to assassinate Abdul Rahman did the Prophet ﷺ then mobilize his troops. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that ill feeling is rife among them. You count them as one, but their hearts are divided. Okay, when one was attacked, the other did not march out to support them. This is the thing. Now, whereas the believers are described of kind of meeting the enemy as one body. Okay, the believers described as meeting the enemy as one body. The Jews were described as being, you think them as being one, but their hearts are divided. Okay, they're separate, their hearts are divided. The Jews kind of mistrustful of each other. They were mistrustful of each other. They remained, what happened is, like I said, we mentioned that Khaybar was a number of fortresses. So what they did was they remained within their castles, within their fortresses. Because there was history of, intra-tribal rivalry and discourse. As there had been, just as we've gone through these issues or the rivalry in Yathrib before the Prophet ﷺ came. Okay, that was the same for the Jews. So there was in Khaybar, there was so much mistrust between them. So it was almost like every man for himself, or kind of every fortress for himself. Okay? Had they got together, so we described 10,000 strong warriors. Had they kind of got together, it would have been so much more difficult. But they were split up. Okay, there was more concern between them that this kind of small army marching, they outnumber the Muslims almost 10 to 1 in their own land. Okay, so with a critical error, they make a critical error. They decide not to help each other. Okay, they decide not to help each other. When the Sahaba were marching, so when they were marching, the Sahaba were kind of full of enthusiasm, Josh, etc. They were shouting out the takbir, out loud, and the Prophet ﷺ told them not to make so much noise. So, one, he said that you're going to tire yourself out. Okay, because remember the kind of dates we get from it is that this is probably literally about 2 weeks after Khandaq. Kind of 2 weeks basically, potentially. So they did not have much time to rest. Okay. Now, so the Prophet ﷺ says, first of all, you're going to try yourself out, don't shout so much. And then also he said, the one you call out to is not deaf. He can hear you. Okay, he can see you. He's closer to you than your jugular vein. Okay. Also, obviously, the Prophet ﷺ did not want to draw much attention to this kind of army that was marching. He did not want to draw much attention. So the army arrived at Khaybar, okay, during the night, kind of almost like snuck up on them. Okay, no noise, no kind of crow, no dog barked. It's like you got this 1,500, 1,1700 kind of arriving. The idea is that everyone will find out, but they kind of almost they traveled at night, just to kind of avoid being, kind of, so they can catch them by surprise. Okay, even the adhan wasn't given. So one nation, even the adhan wasn't given for Fajr. So they just prayed. Okay, and there's a position actually that I come across from the narration that one of the Sahaba asked the Prophet ﷺ, because what happened, the Prophet ﷺ, they marched to Khaybar, and you can say almost like the first fortress. Actually, they got close to that, but they got really close. And one of the Sahaba said to the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, and this is similar to what we had in Badr. And again, it teaches you from the way you should be acting in this situation. The Prophet ﷺ, he would accept opinions from others. Okay, so one of the Sahaba says to the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, is this revelation, the fact that you've gone this close, or is this your own opinion? So to camp so close to the fortress. And the Prophet ﷺ said it was his own. So the Sahaba requested that if that I would suggest that we camp further back to avoid the arrows, etc. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ did both. He camped close initially, but then moved back. Okay, but then moved back. Now, when the people of that particular fortress that were outside opened their kind of doors in the morning to go out, so like the description given, they set out with whatever it is, the tools, etc., for their farming. Okay, so they opened the doors, they set out, and they're just shocked to see the Muslim army standing in front of them. Okay, they were caught by surprise, and the kind of Khaybar army, upon seeing the Muslims, they fled back into their citadel, into their castle, shouting, "Muhammad has come! Muhammad has come!" Okay. Now, the interesting here is that as much as they were surprised, but they had it in them that they knew that the Muslims will come for them because of what they were doing. So open up time and time again, the treachery they were doing, they realized that they'll come. They were kind of confident, but I think, arrogant in the sense that no one can touch us, no one can do anything. Okay, I think it was we spoke about in Badr at that time, how the Jews at that time, they never fought any man really, didn't they? Meaning who they fought, they've not fought real men, as in we're real men. Once they fight real men, then they'll find out. So time and time again, they would come out with this stuff, etc., this treachery, and trying to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ, and on numerous occasions. Okay, so they knew what was coming. They knew what was coming. Anyway, so they rushed back. The Prophet ﷺ responds immediately. Kharibat Khaybar. Khaybar is crushed, or like a play on words. Khaybar will be destroyed, demolished. Okay, so the gates are locked and sealed. The Muslims had laid siege to the kind of first castle, the fortress, and kind of you've got kind of different versions, different opinions, how many days it lasted and whatnot. So one version is that the first one kind of lasted about 6 days without success. They could not penetrate the walls as they had no tool for a siege. Okay, there were some martyrs. One Sahaba was crushed by a log that was thrown. So he got too close, and this is the way they would do it. They just threw a log. There would have been maybe on some other ones they would have had probably catapults, etc. Those are big massive ones where you throw rocks. Okay, but anyway, yeah. So there were some martyrs, and this was an example of one of them. Interesting thing here is because I mentioned about the Ghatafan. So the Jews of Khaybar, they called out to Ghatafan and said that, come along and fight for us. Okay, so the idea here was, the Jews of Khaybar were kind of wondering as well, look, wait a minute, where the people of Ghatafan? The reason they called the Ghatafan was to fight. They would kind of the Jews of Khaybar thought that we'll stay in our fortresses, in our castles, we'll fire out these arrows from far and safe. Let the fools of Ghatafan kind of do all the fighting for us. Let those fools come along, let them do all the fighting. We'll just fire off some arrows from a distance. Okay. So what happened with is Bani Ghatafan had set out with 4,000 men. Okay, they set out with 4,000 men. Even their army was nearly 3 times bigger than the Muslim army. Okay, they were all cavalry. Now, but what happened is during the night march, they were about a day's march away from Khaybar. So what happened is they had heard a voice crying, your people, as in your family. So you just heard this voice of your people, like as in your family, and they got scared. And they thought, has something happened to our family? Back home, has something happened to our family? So after hearing this a few times, they kind of rushed, and they kind of hastened back to the tribal lands to kind of check on their family. What's happened to our family? When they get there, they realize nothing's happened. Okay, when they get there, they realize nothing happened. However, they thought, they thought the Muslims must have been destroyed by now. Okay, so there's no point us now kind of setting out again. Okay? They weren't aware of what's going on. The siege is taking long, etc. They just thought, look, it was only a few Muslims. They've got 10,000 fighting Jews on the other side, right? The Muslims must have been destroyed by now. So it's pointless us setting out. So then that's what happened. The Ghatafan, they did not arrive. Okay, they did not arrive at Khaybar. Okay, they went back home because of that reason that we just mentioned. Okay, so kind of 6 days siege around the first kind of the fortress. If any of the kind of other fortresses had opened their gates and the warriors kind of attacked the Muslims themselves, they would have been surrounded and sieged. but they were all kind of worried about their own, and spent time building up their own defenses. There was, like I mentioned, there was so much distrust between them. Okay, so what happens is eventually the Muslims, they capture a spy. So a spy kind of would come out as normal with a lot of these, campaigns, these battles, these wars, etc. Okay, spies are sent out to check on them. So a spy was captured, and the spy said to them, if you spare me, I'll show you a way into the fortress. Okay, I'll show you a way into a fortress. So they use this kind of and conquer this particular fortress. Now, what happened is that the Muslims had their kind of, at the back of this, they have their own fortress. So some reports say that the spy advised them to cut off the hidden water supply. Okay, if you cut off the hidden water supply to this particular fortress, then the kind of Jews within the fortress will be forced. Okay, so the inhabitants will be forced to kind of come out and fight because you've cut off their water supply. So this is what he informed them. They did that. They cut off the water supply. Then they were forced to kind of open up, and this is how that particular fortress was conquered. Okay. Now, what happens is that, and it's either this one or one of the later ones. Like I said, there's difference of positions or the different narrations on this, but we're trying to bring it together. We know it happens, but it could have been this fortress or the next fortress, etc. Because the Muslims were kind of running low on resources. Okay, first of all, you got food and ration, etc. But the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the fortress that they captured was kind of packed out with all of these resources, with the food, etc., enough for them. So that gave them that boost again. Also, they had what you call the catapult, etc. Those tools to actually conquer fortresses. Okay. Now remember, when it comes to fortresses, the Jews were experts in this. Okay, and when we spoke about the history, etc., some came from Yemen, etc., and this is where they were used to building dams and whatnot, and this is where they came about from. I know at times the Arabs tried to build their own kind of fortresses, but it was not at the same level as the Jews. They were kind of experts at this. They were experts at this, so it was difficult to penetrate, to capture. Okay, so this was the first one that came about, and this is what happened. Okay, now what happened, and then they kind of went around and maybe kind of captured a few of the weaker ones every time here and there. Okay, and again, others did not come out to help. And then you kind of come across one of these kind of strong fortresses. Okay, now what I will do actually next week, we'll look at inshallah, we'll look at some pictures around Khaybar. Okay, we'll look at some pictures around Khaybar. So I was kind of lucky enough to, it was a couple of years ago, to actually go to Khaybar, and I'll kind of mention a bit about it next week, inshallah. And it is beautiful. I mean, like I said, beautiful. I mean, it was an eye opener for me. It's something that I've never seen before. Okay, so we'll look at some videos and pictures on the back of what I made. Okay, so no copyright issues. Okay, well, I'm just thinking what time. Okay, let's finish off on this particular the famous story of Sayyidina Ali. Okay, I was thinking maybe if it was short on time, but we've got about 10 minutes, inshallah. So let's cover this then. So Naim was one of the kind of strongest fortresses, and they kind of struggled to capture this. And the fortress of Naim, after several unsuccessful assaults, the Prophet ﷺ kind of. So what happens is the Prophet ﷺ, there this particular banner, the eagle banner. Okay, so the point of a banner is to rally the troops. The Prophet ﷺ had brought along a small special banner which was called eagle. Okay, he ﷺ had not unfolded this banner yet. Okay, and said that what he said was, tomorrow I will give this banner to the one who loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the one who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. Okay, so I'm going to give this banner to the one who loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. And at that point, every Sahaba was hoping that he would be given this banner. Every Sahaba was hoping that the Prophet ﷺ would choose them. Okay, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu mentions about this. Okay, he says, it was the only time in my life. It was the only time in my life I wanted to have a position of authority. So I wanted to be the kind of leader. It was the only time that I wanted to be leader, when the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that tomorrow he will give it to this person, which kind of again which shows that Sayyidina Umar was not, he didn't have this any love for leadership. The only time he wanted was for this particular point, because of what the Prophet ﷺ said. Okay. Then the following morning, as they all kind of gather, they're all waiting in eagerness. Everyone's thinking, okay, whose name the Prophet ﷺ is going to mention, who's going to mention. And the Prophet ﷺ comes out, maybe comes out of his tent, and he looks around to the Sahaba, and then he says, where's Ali? Okay, where's Ali? Sayyidina Ali was not around at that time. Okay, Sayyidina Ali was not around at that time because he had suffered kind of an eye ailment. Okay, he was virtually blind. He couldn't see out of his eyes. Okay, his eye or his eyes, either way. Okay, and the Sahaba told the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, he's not here. He's not well. Okay, he's not well. But the Prophet ﷺ still, it was a case of, what, that's fine. If he's not well, let me pick someone else. No, the Prophet ﷺ said, bring him to me. Okay, bring him to me. And when he came to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ya Rasulullah, my eyes, I can't see my eyes. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ then places his blessed saliva on his eyes, and they clear up immediately. They clear up, and the pain went away. Okay, and then the Prophet ﷺ handed Sayyidina Ali the banner, and he says, go and take Khaybar. Okay, don't turn back until you capture it. So then Sayyidina Ali he sets off. So he's going to lead now kind of group to take Khaybar, to take this particular fortress. Okay. As he kind of sets off, as he goes along, he stops. He stops on his way, but he does not turn around, because the Prophet ﷺ said, do not turn back till you capture Khaybar. So subhanAllah, look at this, Sayyidina Ali, his thinking is like he didn't want to turn back, because the Prophet ﷺ said, don't until you capture. Obviously, the way the Prophet ﷺ was saying it is in terms of, go forth and, go capture, how you do, this beautiful word. But, Sayyidina Ali took it literally in the sense that, and the adab as well, was something the Prophet ﷺ has said to you. Okay, he did not turn around. He stood there, and from there, then still looking forward, he just shouts out. He shouts out, Ya Rasulullah, what conditions do I give to them? Okay, Ya Rasulullah, what conditions do I give to them? And the Prophet ﷺ say that they testify to the kalma, they testify that one God, and I am the messenger of God. Okay, when they accept, the Prophet ﷺ said, when they accept, they would have saved their lives and possessions from you. Advance towards their homes and wait a while. So he's telling them, advance to their homes and wait a while. Invite them to Islam and tell them about the responsibilities they have towards Allah and His Messenger. I swear by Allah that should a single man become Muslim because of you, this is better for you than valleys of red camels. Again, look at this. Look at the beauty here of, the sole purpose of all of this is, it's about Islam. Even now, the Prophet ﷺ saying, give them an opportunity. If they become Muslim, that's fine. It's better for them. Okay, if one of them becomes Muslim, it's better for you than the valleys of red camels. So it's not about this. Khaybar is a rich place and we're going to conquer it, etc. Okay. Now Khaybar was it's like you got farms and oasis, etc. It was like one of those things. There's so much riches there. Okay, but that wasn't the point. The point was, again, it was about Islam. Okay, time and time again, this is what it is. It was about Islam, and the Prophet ﷺ still, if any of them become Muslim, that's better for them. Better for you, as in like saying that Ali was better for you, better for them as well. Okay, so again he goes forth. Now what happens is like a difference of narration here, and again this is the kind of story that you hear time and time again. And when the description is given by Sayyidina Ali, and we speak about his power, okay, his strength, and it's times where like this, the youngsters kind of get really kind of hyped up as well, that you know, when we describe the strength of Sayyidina Ali. Okay, a kind of ferocious warrior comes out to fight. You know, maybe he was one of the chiefs of the fortress. Okay, so he's a big guy. He come out to fight. Okay, kind of another nation, you know, issues a challenge. You know, send your best, and someone is sent out. Okay, what happens is he recites poetry. Okay, so one version is that when this ferocious warrior comes out, he first fights with one of the Sahaba and he martyrs them. Okay, and then next is when Sayyidina Ali kind of steps forward, and being a leader, because you're the leader of that kind of group, you don't step forward to fight, but he still does. You know, this is Sayyidina Ali. He steps forward to fight, and one of the versions is, the narrations is that this kind of warrior recites poetry. And Sayyidina Ali responds with poetry, and he says, I am the one whose mother named him Heather. Okay, I'm the one whose mother named him Heather. And they fought. Okay, they fought. And like I said, this is where you've got the version of the Sayyidina Ali's shield drops. His shield drops. So then what he does, he rushes towards the gate, you know, the walls of Khaybar, the gates of Khaybar, and then he lifts the gate of Khaybar off his hinges. He lifts it and he uses that as a shield. Okay, so that's one of the versions, that he uses that as a shield. Okay, one narration is that he went straight up to the gates first of all and he lifted them off the hinges. Okay, and again here it shows the power of Sayyidina Ali, because then you have different narrations later on that, and probably one of the most famous ones is that later on, this when describing this, one of the Sahaba says that 7 of us, and don't forget all of these Sahaba are strong. Okay, we described how the trenches and all of that, what they've gone through. So they're strong themselves, but it took 7 of them to lift up, because you know, after saying Ali kind of used it as a shield or whatnot, and he just flung it away. Later on, when he was just describing it, he goes, it took 7 of us to try to lift up that gate. Oh, you know, lift up that gate, or the wall, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, and then other narrations are that it took so much more Sahaba to lift it, but you've got that one. I mean, even forget anything else, even if we don't have to, you know, you say, oh, you're just exaggerating. That was like a, you know, that was a kind of figure that was given for that you cannot deny. Okay, maybe later on you can say, oh, you know, maybe you say, oh, 20, 30, 40. Okay, you're thinking, well, wait a minute, it's only a small gate or whatnot, or it can't be that big, you know, but 7 is a kind of realistic kind of number here, but it shows that how heavy that was, and saying that Ali managed to just lift it like that and use it as a shield. Okay, that was the strength of Sayyidina Ali. That was the strength of Sayyidina Ali. Now finally, so like I said, after that, when he kills this man and they kind of conquer this fortress. Okay, what we do, we'll stop at that. We'll continue. There's not much kind of left of that in terms of it, but we'll continue about that, the rest of Khaybar, and then what happens at the back of it, the conditions, etc. that are set on it, and a few other things that take place. We'll leave that for next week. I'll inshallah show you some pictures as well, and some videos of when I went myself a few years back to Khaybar. Okay. We'll leave it at that, inshallah. Sallallahu Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad wa sallim wa salli alayhi. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.